Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to Day 4 of Official Core Set Previews, as we're starting to see a good chunk of the set at this point. Now, we have a lot of cards to talk about. I want to get right into it again. I will just quickly say, if you are looking for a way to support the channel, just check out the description below. You'll find a few ways to do so. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. The first 4 cards we're going to look at today are actually the last 4 Planeswalker deck exclusive cards. So you will not see these in the actual set. They're not in the limited game. And they are not really costed in a way that they feel like they're going to be like competitive cards for standard or anything like that. So we're just going to go through them quickly so you're aware of what they are. Johnny's Influence, 2 white and 2 sorcery. These are all designated as rare. Put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a white card from among them, put it into your hands, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And you're going to notice that's pretty much the common thread you're going to see in all these cards. They all let you dig a little bit. Sarkhan's Dragonfire, 2 red and 3. Sorcery. This deals 3 damage to any target. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. This time reveal a red card among them. Put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Scala Wolf. This is 2 green and 3. Wolf Spirit. 3/3. When this enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. Guess what you're going to do? Reveal a green card from among them. Put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. And finally, Tezzeret's Gatebreaker. 4 casting cost artifacts. When this enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a blue or artifact card. They're mixing it up on you now. From among them, put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Pay a blue and 5, tap, and sacrifice creatures you control. Can't be blocked this turn. That might certainly end the game for you if you're playing some casual Magic. I don't think they're bad cards at all. They just don't really feel like they're going to do a whole lot in Standard, and obviously they're not part of the limited game. Apex of Power has finally been officially revealed. I'm not going to talk a lot about this card today because we did talk about it at length about a week ago when it was first premiered during the opening of Spellslingers, but it now has been officially revealed by Wizards, and they gave us a cleaned up picture of the card here. This one is a Portuguese language preview. It's Ethereal Shield Artificer. It's a white and 3 Dwarf Artificer. 3/3. This is an uncommon. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target artifact creature you control gets +2/+2 and indestructible until end of turn. Now, this is a limited card for me. With that casting cost, and of course the ability is dependent on having an artifact creature, I don't see it doing anything like Standard necessarily. But for limited, it's a fine card. Azorius Colors, we know, do want to dabble in some artifact shenanigans. So, hey, if you have that going on, this will be fine for you. You just want to make sure most of the time that you have at least a few artifact creatures that can interact with this. Now, if you don't, it's still a curve filler, like a 4 casting cost 3/3 isn't the worst thing in the world. But you don't want to play this if you don't think you're going to be able to consistently use that ability. That's where the card really shines. So, in Limited, it's going to be pretty decent in a lot of decks, but sometimes it won't make your cut. Hieromancer's Cage. White and 3, it's an enchantment uncommon. When this enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. Now, you might look at this card and say, this reminds me a lot of Cast Out, other than the fact that it doesn't have flash and it doesn't have the ability to cycle. Yeah, and you'd be right. That's exactly what this card is. It's a watered-down version of that card. So as long as Cast Out isn't Standard, I don't see this card really doing a whole lot. Cast Out will rotate out, but that doesn't necessarily mean this card will see a lot of Standard play either, because there are a lot of other good options right now for White when it comes to removal, and there'll be a whole new set that comes out, and I feel like this is more of a limited card for the most part. This will be great in Limited, though. Like, you'll be happy to play it there if you pick it up. Isolate. Here's another one of these answer cards. They're doing a really good job at finding ways to really mix up especially some of the older formats. This will cost you 1 white. It's an instant rare. Exile target permanent with converted mana cost 1. I could list targets for this all day long. If we're going to talk Vintage, Legacy, and Modern, this immediately goes into sideboards in all of those formats. I would even, maybe for a moment, consider main decking this in Modern. I don't know, though. I think I would just keep it in the sideboard. I think that's safer. Standard, if there's any 1 casting cost permanents that are going to have an impact on the format at any point now, we have an answer, and that's awesome. That is fantastic design. Good job, Wizards. They're getting it now. Okay, what about limited? You're not going to play this. Again, unless you sideboard it in. If your opponent does have a 1 casting cost permanent that you care about, then bring it in, but you won't start with it in your deck. It might be a little disappointing to open this in rare in an actual sealed draft event. Leonin Vanguard. This is 1 white. It's a cat soldier, uncommon 1/1. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures, this gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and you gain 1 life. This one's not super thrilling to me. I do think there's potential for the cat deck to be revitalized, or if it's not the cat deck like we knew it before, maybe it's more of a Selesnya or White Weenie deck. Could evolve in this next meta, perhaps. But I don't think this card is going to be a big part of it. One of the issues is it's just very fragile. You have Chain Whirler out there and stuff, and I'm afraid that Chain Whirler is turning into the new Doomblade. I think we're going to measure everything against that forever now, but it is what it is, right? So I don't see this necessarily breaking into Standard very well, but I think in Limited it's a fine card as long as you have some synergies with it. For example, you want to be in a Go Wide, maybe Boros deck, or you could be in the Black-White Life Gain draft archetype. Either of those I think would want this card, but a lot of decks might not too. So it doesn't always make your cut, but if you're in those builds, this could be decent for you for sure. Casual players that play cat decks too, this one and another card we're going to look at in just a moment, definitely pay attention to. Leonin Warleader. 2 white and 2. It's a cat soldier, rare 4/4. Now when this attacks, create 2 1/1 white cat creature tokens with lifelink that are tapped and attacking. This now does feel like a very strong option for a cat deck in Standard even. So maybe this is the type of card that could revitalize that deck a little bit. Or like I said, maybe the deck changes and evolves. Maybe it's just not a cat deck as much as it is a small creature deck, something along those lines. But this is very, very solid for 4 mana. This is a bomb in Limited. I don't think I even have to tell you that. It reminds me a little bit of Hero of Bladehold, which is a very, very strong card as a matter of fact. You see that in a lot of cubes even to this day. So this does see Standard play, I have no doubt. Awesome and Limited, and again, like I said a moment ago, cat players, take notice of this one. This card comes to us from a Portuguese language preview. It's Novice Knight. It costs 1 white. It's a human knight defender 2/3. As long as Novice Knight is enchanted or equipped, it may attack as long as you didn't have defender. So it's a defender. They have to jump through some hoops before it actually can attack. Is that horrible? In Limited, I don't think it is because it's a 1-drop 2/3. Even if you're just blocking with this, that's actually not bad. Some decks will want to gum up the ground a little bit. And even if you don't start with it in your main deck, side it in against aggro decks, this will shut some of those decks down in the early turns. That's kind of awesome, especially like Boros or something like that. Now, the ability itself is okay. I would rather probably use it with equipment. I feel like this is one of those cards that's here to teach new players that when they dump all their auras on one card, bad things happen. Maybe that's the design here. But it's okay with equipment, definitely. And yeah, I could see it maybe becoming an offensive threat if you have some good equipment in Limited. Sun Cleanser. Here's another answer card. I love it. A white and 1, human cleric, rare, 1/4. When this enters the battlefield, choose 1. Remove all counters from target creature. It can't have counters put on it for as long as Sun Cleanser remains on the battlefield, or target opponent loses all counters. That player can't get counters for as long as Sun Cleanser remains on the battlefield. So, energy decks, right? Where was this thing about, 4 or 5 months ago when we really needed it? I'm glad it exists, though. Energy is not gone yet, so if there's a card that can keep that in check in case it starts to get really powerful again, I'm all for it. And again, just having these answers does allow Wizards to be able to design more powerful cards. If the answers don't exist, that's when bad things happen. So I really like this design path they're taking now. Outside of that, play this in Commander if you have players that like experience counters. That will kind of get to them a little bit. There's also a lot of other things I'm sure you can find to do with this in Commander. This next one is a French language preview, Mystic Archaeologist. It's a blue and 1 human wizard. Pay 2 blue and 3, draw 2 cards. It's a 2/1. This one's rare. Now, in Standard, again, too fragile. The card draw is nice, but it's probably not going to live very long. Aside from that, though, in Limited, yeah, play it all day long. This is first pickable, I think, in a lot of packs, and that's probably why this card was designed. This is going to help you, even in the middle portion of the game, start drawing extra cards. Later in the game, potentially, you might be able to draw 4 cards in one turn if you get to the point you have 10 mana available. That's kind of crazy. You're simply going to win with card advantage unless your opponent destroys this. They kind of have to, or they're going to be having a bad day. Fraying Omnipotence. 2 black and 3, sorcery, rare. Each player loses half their life, then discards half the cards in their hands, then sacrifices half the creatures they control. Round up each time. So this is a Pox type effect, and that can be very powerful. We've seen that in the past. I feel like this will see standard play at some point. Maybe it is in a reanimation style deck where you can kind of clean up the board a little bit, do some damage, dump your big creature you want to reanimate in the graveyard, hang on to your reanimation spell, reanimate, and try to finish up the game. That's very possible. Who knows? Maybe that will happen in this upcoming meta. If not, I think after rotation, definitely you'll start to see some strategies like that, and this card will most likely be a part of them. Other than that, in Limited, this is a little more high variance for you there. It's not great if you're behind, so you have to be kind of careful. Does this always make the build? No, but again, there are some reasons you might want to play it, and a lot of that probably, again, revolves around graveyard interactions. So if you have good ones, then this all of a sudden becomes very, very playable for you there. In Commander, this might put a big target on you, but it is going to definitely clean up the board, and perhaps, again, if you have a deck tailored to this type of mechanic, could give you an advantage. Liliana, Untouched by Death. 2 black and 2, Legendary Planeswalker Liliana, the Mythic Rare, 4 loyalty, +1. Put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. If at least one of them is a zombie card, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. -2. Target creature gets -X/-X till end of turn, where X is the number of zombies you control. -3. You may cast zombie cards from your graveyard this turn. Wow, okay. First thing I need to point out is that Ultimate you can actually play right away, and it also doesn't destroy Liliana, so that's kind of awesome. Obviously, this wants to be played in a zombie build, okay? And I think that's interesting design. It does make some of these Planeswalkers a little more narrow. We were talking about Sarkhan yesterday, where he kind of wants to be in a dragon deck. Well, Liliana wants to be in a zombie deck. You can maybe manipulate that a little bit thanks to cards like Arcane Adaptation, which does exist out there even in the standard format. As a matter of fact, if you take that card with Liliana and Skirk Prospector, you can create a loop, which if you want to go off with Storm, that's one way to do it. Is it the most efficient way if we're talking like Modern or Legacy? No, probably not. But casually, could be kind of fun to try out if nothing else. Now, realistically in Standard, do you think we'll see a zombie deck? It's possible, especially in the future post-rotation. We'll have to kind of see what other cards we get, what other cards are even in this set, which we don't know about yet. I do think there is at least a possibility of that. And again, I mentioned Arcane Adaptation. That could actually complement that deck a little bit, especially if you are all in on this type of strategy. Could be kind of interesting to brew. Now, if you're playing casually, you already have zombie decks or a Commander zombie deck, this is going to fit perfectly in there. In Limited, it could be a tad awkward in some ways, unless you have some zombies. This could be better for you in Draft than Sealed because of that. But at the same time, it's still a Planeswalker. And if you need to just populate your graveyard, even if you don't have many zombies, but maybe you have some reanimation spells, it could still be playable in those circumstances. So it's a Planeswalker. Usually in Limited, you're going to try to make it work to the best of your ability. But this one is very niche. Liliana's Contract. 2 black and 3. This is a rare enchantment. When this enters the battlefield, you draw 4 cards and you lose 4 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game. Okay, for limited purposes, you're probably not going to hit all the demons, but what's going to happen more than likely is just drawing 4 cards and losing 4 life for 5. That's actually pretty good. I would play that in Limited and be real happy with it, as a matter of fact. So it's not a bad card for you there. Now, what about Standard? Can you make this thing happen? Again, I'm going to go to Arcane Adaptation. I think if it does happen in Standard, it's going to be through those means. Now, you do have to remember, too, maybe that's not your plan A in a deck. You could use this as a backup win condition within maybe, I don't know, a reanimation deck again or something like that. That could be kind of interesting, too. So I do think that this does sneak into Standard. Again, maybe not this meta, but definitely before it leaves Standard. Perhaps this fall. But I do think someone's going to try to pull this off. It could actually be quite good with the right shell around it. This is definitely one to watch. Finally, for casual play or Commander, it's an alternative win condition. Those are always fun to try to build around. Siegebreaker Giant, 2 red and 3. Giant Warrior, uncommon 6/3. With Trample, pay a red and 3. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Great limited card. It's a little fragile, sure, with a 3 toughness, but this is all about trying to push across damage through a board stall. That ability is fantastic because if you have 8 mana, that means 2 of your opponent's creatures won't be able to block. That's the type of thing that's going to help you end a game that's getting drawn out and starting to get too gummed up. So I would be really happy to run one of these in my deck most of the time, I think, if I'm running red. Thorn Lieutenant. This one comes to us from a Japanese language preview. It's a green and 1 elf warrior. It's a 2/3 rare. Whenever this becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token, pay a green and 5, and this will get +4/+4 until end of turn. Okay, the abilities are good. They're not anything crazy. If my opponent's targeting this, they're probably removing it, and really, why are they removing a 2/3 unless they're really falling behind or something like that? And all I get is a 1/1 token, whatever, not a big deal. The +4/+4 could be relevant later in the game, but this doesn't have trample or evasion, so it's not going to be super good probably at that point most of the time anyway, unless I'm already going to win. But the reason I'm excited about this card is it's a 2/3 for 2. Those are really nice stats to put out on turn 2. We've seen 2/3s for 2 before with drawbacks, like sometimes they come into play tapped or something like that. But this one doesn't have a drawback. Actually, what it does have might not be thrilling, but it's upside. I'd be happy to play this. Throw it down on turn 2 as a 2/3, especially against those aggressive decks, again, Boros maybe. You can start to really mess those up by having a blocker that's going to deal with anything they can throw down early in the game. Later in the game, if you have 6 mana available, okay, you got an even bigger creature from time to time. And if you have 12 mana available for some reason, it's even bigger. So, wonderful. But again, it's all about, for me, those base stats of 2/3 and limited. Vigilant Baloth. 2 green and 3. It's a beast. Uncommon 5/5. Vigilance. Another decent limited card for you. Nothing crazy here. Very solid. Very playable. Dragon's Horde. 3 casting cost artifact. It's a rare. Whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, put a gold counter on Dragon's Horde. Tap. Remove a gold counter from this and you draw a card. Tap. Add 1 mana of any color. Now in limited you might not have a ton of dragons. If you have 1 or 2, well, wonderful. But you probably play this more for color fixing. Maybe you're trying to splash a color, maybe you got one of those Elder Dragons, you want to be able to play it, then this card will be very good for you in those cases. Sometimes you probably skip it though because you don't need it. I don't think this does a lot in Standard, I don't really necessarily see Dragon decks being a thing there, but where they are a thing, of course, is Commander. Casual Dragon decks, Commander Dragon decks, they're going to love this card. Alright, this one's a Russian language preview. It's Watchtower. It's a land. You can tap for colorless mana, pay 1 and tap. Until end of turn, your opponents and creatures they control with hexproof can be targets of spells and abilities as though they didn't have hexproof. Okay, it's another answer card. I'm on board. Let's talk about limited first. Now, this probably is not going to be exciting again if you open this as your rare and draft your sealed, but it's in your sideboard if you need it. If your opponent has a hexproof creature, bring it in. You can deal with it then. Now, some folks might say, I can just main deck this as part of my mana base. And you can, but I want to do that if you're trying to go too deep with colors. Even if I'm splashing a third or going any deeper than that, I want this in my sideboard and not part of my lands, just because I don't want to dilute what I'm doing there. But sometimes you will be able to main deck this, and it's just fine for you. Standard, Shalai exists, and this does deal with Shalai, so it's a good answer to that card. That has seen play already in Standard, and I do think could see more play post-rotation. So again, I'm happy they printed a card like this, and also it protects us from any other hexproof creatures that could be really strong in the future as well. Modern, maybe in the sideboard for Boggles. Remember, Slippery Boggle, it doesn't say hexproof printed on the card, but the ability is hexproof, and it is called hexproof in the Oracle text, so do remember that. The thing with modern sideboarding is there's so many really strong decks out there. At any moment, any number of them could take a tournament or top 8, so you don't always know exactly what to prepare for. But Boggles is one of the good ones. Maybe you're worried about it, maybe you're not. It just depends on that moment in the meta, probably. Now, where I think this card actually shines the most, though, is Commander. I realize Arcane Lighthouse already exists, but that's a little bit different. It deals with Shroud, where this doesn't, but this deals with hexproof on actual players. So I think that's kind of cool. If you're worried about that type of thing within your play group, I would probably just run both of these. Gin of Wishes. Now, this is not a high-value reprint. Actually, a lot of the reprints we're seeing today are all under $1 for the most part. But this one is still fun to play in Limited and could even be first pickable. If you hit with that ability, you can really shift the board state. It can be kind of fun. Switcheroo, another card. We've seen it printed many times. We know what it does. In Limited, again, it can actually really change the dynamic of a game from time to time. Wind Reader Sphinx. I like this card a lot, actually. It's a good limited card, 3/7 flyer for 7. I think this is a little expensive for, say, Standard, but in Limited, being able to have a significant flyer and draw some cards will be excellent there. Rise from the Grave. Now, this has seen standard play in the past when it's been printed in standard. Actually, the last time it was in print in standard legal, it did see a tad bit of play. So I won't count it out ever, especially if some reanimation does happen down the road or even in the next meta. But we also have the Eldest Reborn right now, so that's going to dilute maybe the importance of this card just a little bit. And those are the cards for today. Now, I do know there's going to be more coming out later. If anything significant does come out, I will do a follow-up video. If not, tomorrow the rest of the set will be revealed, so we will go over the next group of cards that we haven't seen yet leading into the weekend. And then, of course, on Saturday, we're going to do our market watch as we always do. But until next time, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.